I hear Comachero's running again.
Yeah, that's the buzz. Here all you want. All right, let's go ahead and get this show on the road. Go ahead and call this meeting to order. Can we have the flag salute, please, by Mr. Stewart?
All right, everybody join me in saluting the flag. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
No, really. I didn't realize it. All right, can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Comachero.
Here.
Councilmember Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Nagar.
Fine morning.
Councilmember Stewart.
Here.
Mayor Ron.
Hey, good morning. All right. Let's see. Let's start with public comments. Do we have any public comments this morning?
We have no public comments under non-agendized item and one public comment on the agenda item.
Okay, we'll get to that one when we get there. So the only thing we have on our agenda this morning is review fiscal year 2019-23 capital improvement program and review fiscal year 2018-19 CIP and annual operating budgets for City of Temecula, the Temecula Community Services District, and the successor agency to the Temecula Redevelopment Agency. Go ahead and start with the staff report, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Welcome. I am proud to report that we have balanced the city's budget out 5 years, fully funded all reserves, and continue to provide the necessary resources today, tomorrow, and in the future to maintain the highest quality of life for this community. The benefits of 5-year budget forecasting and modeling are numerous, and they allow council to evaluate our business options and make the necessary course corrections. Given there are multiple pieces to our budget, funding sources that in some cases touch 3 different budgets, I would like to suggest that we provide the City Council the full presentation and then come back for individual questions and discussions. If this is acceptable, I think it will allow the broader and much bigger financial picture to be presented and digested. The agenda for today will include an overview of the 5-year CIP, recommendations outlined in the proposed operating budget for fiscal year 18-19, the TCSD operating budget, as well as a discussion on 5-year strategic planning. But before we introduce the CIP and the proposed budget, I wanted to share some current demographic information about the city, which plays a significant role in the strength of our local economy and our budget. As recently published from Nielsen Reports and the Southwest Riverside County Board of Realty, the following demographics have been provided. Our current population is reported at just over 113,000. This is up nearly 2% over last year. The median age in years in Temecula is 35.1, slightly higher than the 34.9 in 2017. And the number of households in Temecula is up 1.5% from last year to 35,466. Our average household income is up 12.4% over the year to nearly 110,000. And our April median home price income in our home price in Temecula is 460,000. This also is up 5% over the previous year. And the number of jobs that are tied back to Temecula is 55,100, and this is significant. This is up 6.6% over the previous year. Significant because it's the highest job count in the city's history. Our March unemployment rate for Temecula was recorded at 3.5%. Put this into context, Riverside County was at 4.2, the state of California 4.2, and the nation at 4.1. So obviously a trend that we want to continue to see. The proposed operating budget and CIP has been drafted to be in line with the 6 core values of the City Council adopted Quality of Life Master Plan from 2011, as displayed there on the screen. And it has been just over a year since Measure S became effective as a result of voter approval in November 2016. This new revenue source has undoubtedly changed the landscape for the city of Temecula. Since April 2017, the city has received $20 million in Measure S revenue and is expected to receive a total of $25.2 million next fiscal year. Measure S funds are programmed in accordance with council's guidelines, with public safety being the top priority. Measure S has funded the addition of 10 sworn police officers, 4 of which are dedicated to homeless outreach. Measure S has afforded the city to hire the staffing to open Fire Station 95 in the Roarpaw Ranch area. Measure S has allowed us to replace the city's ladder truck, which is on order, and several fire vehicles have also been able to be replaced to enhance fire personnel safety. Measure S funds are being reinvested back into the city's infrastructure, facilities, and equipment to ensure the long-term viability of city assets. Over 50 miles of road resurfacing has occurred, and more is scheduled for this next year. The Ronald H. Roberts Temecula Public Library received a portion of Measure S to refurbish and repaint the facility. The soccer fields at Patricia H. Birdsall Sports Park have been replaced with new synthetic turf fields. And the Ronald Reagan Sports Park will see an expansion and renovation of its public restroom facilities. Measure S has also funded multiple capital improvements across the city. 5 city parks received new playground equipment, with 3 more slated for this coming year. Funding for the reconstruction of the Margarita Recreation Center is programmed for fiscal year 18-19, and funding to complete the design of the new Teen Village project to be located at the Community Recreation Center has also been included in this next year. Measure S also supports the many programs, services, and events offered by the Temecula Community Services District. As you can see, Measure S has had a profound impact on our community in a short span of time. These funds will continue to enhance public safety, protect city assets, invest in capital infrastructure, and provide improved quality of life through TCSD's people's parks and programs. And at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Pat Thomas, our Public Works Director, who will walk us through the proposed capital improvement program.
Thank you, Aaron. Capital Improvement Program, also known as the CIP, is a comprehensive planning document that identifies and prioritizes major capital improvement projects over the next 5 years. Major capital projects are those that are in excess of $30,000 in cost and have a long-term lifespan. Projects in this document are reflected in each of the 5 fiscal years based on community needs as determined by the City Council and availability of funding. Many of the projects in the CIP are funded with one-time revenue sources that are non-recurring. Therefore, it's extremely important that the appropriate level of effort is expended to maximize the efficiency and effectiveness of those one-time dollar sources. There are a total of 60 projects proposed in the CIP that are categorized as circulation projects aimed at reducing traffic congestion, infrastructure and public facilities, parks projects, and a placeholder for available housing funds administered by the SARTA or the successor agency to the former RDA. There's approximately $533 million in total project costs within the CIP. $389 million represents the cost to complete the projects. $144 million has been previously spent on the listed capital projects, and we've identified $289 million in funded CIP projects for the term of the 5-year CIP. $38 million has been newly appropriated in fiscal year 18-19, with $77 million that was appropriated in a prior year and will be carried over to the fiscal year 2018-19 budget. As shown on the table, $305 million of the project costs are identified for circulation improvements across 21 projects. There are 26 infrastructure projects totaling $57 million, 12 parks and recreation projects totaling $14.6 million, and a placeholder project for the remaining $12.5 million in redevelopment agency bonds. There's a total of 9 new projects requested in the CIP this year, totaling over $14 million. These projects will be discussed in more detail in the slides to follow. Some of the major traffic circulation projects include the Interstate 15 and Temecula Parkway, or SR 79 interchange, and that project is on schedule for completion by the end of this calendar year. We're also continue to work on the I-15 branding and visioning and the conceptual landscape plans for the I-15 corridor, focusing on the South 79 or Temecula Parkway interchange this coming year. Our French Valley Parkway and I-15 Phase 2 project is fully funded at this time. We are continuing to work on the design of the project. However, the funding for this project is somewhat contingent on the STIP funds that were budgeted using the new SB1 gas tax. So we are looking to make contingency plans for that project if that gas tax is repealed. We're working on the Butterfield Stage Road extension, the Phase 3 project from Rancho California to La Serena. That project will be advertised for bid soon, and we anticipate starting construction on that project later this summer. The Diaz Road expansion project will be a continuation of the western bypass north of Rancho California Road to Cherry Street. And we are working on a new project for a bridge across Marietta Creek at Overland Drive. The Nicholas Road project extension and improvements will be funded through the recently issued CFD bonds for the Rorpaw Ranch development. With respect to our streets, certainly one of the highest priorities we can strive for is the proper maintenance of our roadways. We've recently updated our pavement condition index to survey the city's road network and assign a rating to each road. This analysis provides recommended funding levels to maintain the condition of our road network and will be used to prioritize available funds. The fiscal year 2018-19 pavement rehabilitation project is funded with $8.4 million. Some of the major projects we'll be doing this year include Rancho California Road from west of I-15 to the city limits. That project contract was recently awarded on that project and will be starting in the next 30 days. Winchester Road from Nicholas to the eastern city limits. Inez Road from Winchester to Date Street. We'll be doing another residential slurry seal project this year, along with maintaining the Meadowview Loop roads, Via Norte and Del Rey Road. Also, we'll be maintaining the Business Park Drive Loop, including Diaz to Rancho Cal and the Ridge Park Drive area. There are a total of 26 infrastructure projects with over $57 million in costs. Notable projects include the Bike Lane and Trail Program, which includes $193,000 in carryover funds, with an additional $179,000 allocated this next fiscal year. Part of the Bike Lane and Trail Program includes a separate project that was created to fund the construction of a bike pump track at the Ronald Reagan Sports Park at a cost of $300,000. The city will save significantly on its annual street lighting costs through the streetlight acquisition and LED conversion project. Following approval by the CPUC, hopefully soon, the city will acquire approximately 7,500 streetlights throughout the city and begin the conversion to LED light fixtures. We will also be investigating how our streetlight infrastructure can be utilized for future smart city applications and other revenue-generating possibilities. The Information Technology Department has been working with the consultants to inventory the city's facilities and develop recommendations for a comprehensive citywide surveillance camera program. The goals of this program will be to support public safety, traffic management, and asset protection activities in service of our citizens. Funding for this project is reflected at $2.9 million, plus amounts included in the various facilities scheduled to have surveillance cameras installed. Total cost of the citywide project is estimated to be $4.5 million, and this contract was approved by the City Council earlier this week. The recently completed ADA transition plan includes funding for identified projects over the next 5 years from the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, to implement improvements identified in the plan. As the highest circulating library in Riverside County, Ronald H. Roberts Temecula Public Library is proposed to have a second parking lot installed below the existing lot. A total of $1 million is programmed to evaluate the feasibility and design of a new parking structure in Old Town. The city has chosen a consulting firm of Fair and Peers to conduct parking counts in Old Town, which will take place this June. The results will provide the city valuable insights into how the parking supply in Old Town is being used and what parking management strategies should be implemented to improve the parking experience for those coming to Old Town. The results of the parking study will also inform future decisions on the most efficient location of a new parking structure. Design for the reconstruction of the former YMCA, now called the Margarita Recreation Center, and construction funding of $4.8 million is included in the fiscal year 18-19 program for this new intergenerational community center. An additional $2.8 million is programmed for the pool to be designed for fiscal year 19-20 and constructed in fiscal year 2023 as funding becomes available. As noted earlier, the new CIP project has been included for the renovation of the pool facility located at the Temecula Elementary School, which is utilized by the city for its aquatics programming. Funding for this $335,000 renovation is programmed in fiscal year 18-19. A total of $1.1 million is programmed for the design of the new teen village to be constructed at the Ronald Reagan Sports Park adjacent to the CRC facility. $8.4 million has been programmed for the construction of this facility in fiscal year 2021, leveraging Measure S funds with development impact fees. The city has $2.7 million programmed for sidewalk improvements in fiscal year 2018-19. With the recent passage of SB 1, or the new gas tax, funding has been provided in the amount of $3.6 million to fund the construction of the San Gratuitous Creek pedestrian bicycle trail extension and interconnect project connecting the trail from Nez Road to Murrieta Creek. City matching funds of $702,000 will be provided by Measure S, connecting the trail as mentioned. Fire stations 73 and 84 are both in need of funding to add new facilities and renovate existing facilities at these stations. Both of these projects will be funded with Measure S dollars. The pool at the CRC is due for renovation, including removal and replacement of pool decking, pool replastering, and installation of enhanced lighting systems with energy-efficient LED fixtures. A total of $608,000, including carryover funds, is programmed for the coming year for park improvements, including parking lot repairs and resurfacing, concrete sidewalk replacement, fencing repairs and replacement, landscaping and irrigation system efficiency upgrades, drainage system improvements, and lighting system repairs and efficiency upgrades. The city recently renovated 5 city parks with new playground equipment and is slated to renovate 3 more in fiscal year 18-19, including Riverton, Temecula Hills, and Rotary Parks, which are on schedule to receive enhanced playground equipment and improved safety surfacing. Another new project this year includes the resurfacing of the city's various sports courts funded with Measure S dollars, including the 2 inline hockey rinks, tennis courts, and basketball courts. Additionally, Harveston Lake is scheduled to receive improvements to its lake aeration system, and various public restrooms throughout the city will be renovated, again utilizing Measure S funds, in addition to a full renovation and expansion of the restroom and snack bar facilities at the Ronald Reagan Sports Park. I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Luke Watson, Community Development Director, who will provide details on the SARTA capital improvement budget.
Thanks, Pat. In 2010 and 2011, the former redevelopment agency issued affordable housing bonds, which were recently refinanced in 2017. As a result of the dissolution of the redevelopment agency in 2012, the remaining $12.5 million in affordable housing bonds proceeds were passed to the city for use in the development of affordable housing. In order to utilize these bond proceeds for their specifically intended purpose, which of course is the development of affordable housing, the city released a request for proposals, or an RFP, to solicit innovative project ideas from the development community. The release of the RFP was intended to engage a competitive process whereby the development teams would vie for the remaining bond proceeds, and thus the city could then select the most impactful and cost-effective development possible. This effort resulted in the receipt of 20 separate affordable housing development proposals, which was a record for the city in an affordable housing RFP. The City Council reviewed all 20 proposals and made specific recommendations on which projects should move on in the selection process. The Supportive Housing Subcommittee, along with staff, interviewed each applicant, and the subcommittee ultimately recommended 2 firms to begin negotiations of potential funding agreements based on their unique project proposals. Any agreements entered into will identify the specific amount of affordable housing dollars allocated to each development. Negotiations are ongoing, and staff is expecting that if these talks are successful, funding agreements will be before the council for consideration by the end of this calendar year. This time, I will turn it over to Mr. Adams to complete the CIP portion of the presentation.
Thanks, Luke. The proposed CIP program was presented to the Community Services Commission on May 7th. It will be presented to the Public Traffic Safety Commission this evening, and on June 6th, the Planning Commission will review the CIP for consistency with the general plan. Formal adoption of the final CIP budget by the City Council is scheduled for Tuesday, June 12th. And at this time, I would like to introduce our Finance Director, Jennifer Hennessy, to provide an overview of the fiscal year 18-19 annual operating budget. Jennifer?
All right, thank you. Good morning. I'm pleased to report again this year that the general fund, which serves as the primary operating fund for the city, is structurally balanced in fiscal year 18-19. Revenue is projected at $78 million this year, which reflects a 2.3% growth rate over the prior year. Expenditures are projected to be $76 million, which is an increase of 4.1% over the prior year, driven primarily by the investment in public safety, which is increasing by $3.7 million or 9% due to the enhanced staffing levels supported by Measure S. General fund contributions to other funds include the $2.1 million annual debt service payment for the Civic Center, $2.5 million for the conversion of city street lights to LED bulbs, $227,000 for the installation of a traffic signal adjacent to the park and ride, plus $367,000 for the financing of streetlight acquisition project previously mentioned. The general fund is projected to end the fiscal year with $24 million in fund balance. Policy level reserves are fully funded at $19 million, which represents 25% of the general fund operating budget. $362,000 is set aside for the Pechanga-funded police officer, and $4,000 is assigned to prepaid costs, leaving a total available fund balance of just under $4.7 million for one-time expenditures. The budget process begins each year in January with the projection of revenue, which serves as the foundation for the development of the operating budget. To begin this process, staff analyzes each major revenue source, reviews economic trends, and adjusts for local anomalies such as new businesses or development projects expected to occur during the coming year. In addition, we receive input from a team of consultants for both sales and property tax projections. Revenue is expected to increase by 2% this year. The city's largest revenue source is sales tax, which is actually decreasing by 1%, but that's due to a large one-time adjustment to a major taxpayer in the prior year. Property tax revenue is expected to be 5% higher due to increased home values and new home inventories. Property tax in lieu of vehicle license fees is tied to the growth in the city's assessed valuation and is projected to grow 4%. Franchise fees are received from local utility and cable providers for the use of the public right-of-way. This revenue source is projected to remain flat next year due to a decrease in customer base for cable subscribers, offset by increases in electricity rates. Measure S funds are accounted for in a separate fund for increased transparency, and a portion is transferred to the general fund to cover the costs of public safety. Again, revenues are projected to increase by 2% to a total of $78 million. As illustrated in the pie chart, general fund revenue comes from a variety of sources. Sales tax makes up 47% of the total revenue base. Property tax contributes 11%. Property tax in lieu of VLF generates 10%. 4% comes from franchise fees. An additional 4% from TOT, or transient occupancy tax. 5% comes from the licenses and permit fees generated by building, planning, land development, and fire departments. Measure S contributes a total of 7%, and 4% is received as reimbursement revenue from the CIP for administration, as well as from Pechanga for the funding of one sworn police officer. The general fund operating budget for fiscal year 18-19 is projected at $76 million. Public safety makes up the majority of the budget and reflects the investment of Measure S funding to bring the police staffing ratio to an estimated 1 officer per 1,000 residents, and the police budget reflects a projected increase of 6%, and the fire contract includes a full year's staffing at Station 95, plus 2 new positions to support the fire inspection program. Administrative departments reflect a 4% increase due to inflationary growth and the addition of a new half-time position in the Economic Development Department to support the city's social media outreach efforts. Public Works budget is 5% above the prior year, due primarily to a new mandate from the State Water Resource Control Board to install 500 catch basin inlet filters in the city's storm drains over the next 10-year period. Community development also reflects a 5% increase due to the addition of 3 new positions, including a building inspector, an assistant planner, and an office specialist 2. Finally, the non-departmental category reflects a 51% decrease, as the prior year included 2 large one-time payments that are not occurring in fiscal year 18-19. 59% of the general fund resources are dedicated to public safety, which is a 4 percentage point increase over the prior year and a 10 percentage point increase from just 2 years ago as a result of Measure S investments. Public safety operating budget totals $44.5 million. Public Works, including CIP admin, parks maintenance, land development, makes up 19% of the total budget with a budget of $14 million. CIP admin is fully reimbursed from eligible capital projects and is reflected as general fund revenue. Administration, which includes the city manager's office, emergency services, economic development, finance, human resources, city attorney, city clerk, council, and the community support, total 13% of the general fund operating budget. And community development, which includes planning and building and safety, receives 7% of the budget with a budget of $5.4 million. I'll now turn it over to presentation over to Police Chief Lisa McConnell, who will present the police budget.
Thank you, Jennifer. Please bear with me as I get through this. As the largest expenditure of the general fund, the police department budget is projected at $34.6 million for the coming year. The budget reflects a 6% increase over the prior year and includes the continued funding for the 10 police officers added in April 2017, funded by Measure S, plus 1 additional sworn officer for fiscal year 18-19 to maintain existing officer to population ratio. The budget also includes a replacement of 2 motorcycles and the continued 50% cost sharing agreements with Temecula Valley Unified School District to fund 5 school resource officers. The police department is currently staffed with 112 sworn officers, 17 community service officers, and 18 administrative personnel. Now I'd like to introduce Fire Chief Charlie DeHart, who will be presenting the fire department budget.
Thank you, Lisa. The fire department budget is projected at $18.6 million, which is offset by $8.8 million fire tax credit collected via the property tax payments. The net impact to the city is $9.8 million, which is a 21.5% increase over the prior year. This is due to a full year staffing at Fire Station 95, combined with the addition of 2 new positions to support the fire inspection program, which was introduced this year to the business community and will be fully implemented in the coming fiscal year. 2 new fire inspection vehicles are recommended, as well as the replacement of 2 fire administration vehicles. As part of last year's budget, the replacement of the city's ladder truck was approved, with the cost being spread over 2 fiscal years. It is anticipated this new fire apparatus will be received by the end of June 2019. The department has 75 employees and maintains 4-person engine staffing model. And now we'll turn it back over to Jennifer to finish the operating budget.
Thanks, Charlie. The non-safety departments represent the remaining 41% of the general fund, with a total budget of $31.5 million, and includes the addition of 3.5 positions previously mentioned, plus a new citywide training program designed to offer customer service and management training management training opportunities for staff. And finally, the budget continues the funding for community support grants of $125,000. Capital outlay expenditures are those that exceed $5,000 and have a useful life of more than 3 years. Capital outlay requests include the replacement of several fleet vehicles, including 6 for community development, 8 for public works, 2 police motorcycles, 4 fire vehicles, and 1 vehicle for the information technology department. Additional requests include the replacement of technology equipment, copiers, and council meeting broadcast equipment. New for fiscal year 18-19, and in accordance with council's appropriation guidelines for Measure S, is the establishment of a facilities replacement fund to set aside funding for the future replacement of equipment, systems, and fixtures within city-owned facilities. Original projections of Measure S revenue were estimated to bring in $23 million per year. After the first 3 quarters of receipts, Measure S is on target to generate $25 million in the current fiscal year, and a modest growth rate was applied for 18-19 to bring the projection to $25.2 million. Expenditures have been programmed in accordance with the City Council's appropriation guidelines summarized in the following slides. Fiscal year 18-19 budget reflects an allocation of $26.5 million, including in Measure S funding, programmed in the following appropriation categories: public safety, asset management, capital projects, and general services, which is primarily to support the Community Services Department. Public safety remains the city's top priority, with $5.8 million invested from Measure S to fund the 10 police officers added in 2017, staffing at Fire Station 95, and the replacement of a ladder truck and 6 inspection vehicles. Investments in asset management ensure the ongoing maintenance and replacement of the city's aging infrastructure, vehicles, facilities, and technology are funded adequately into the future. The allocation to asset management includes $500,000 to the Fleet Replacement Fund, the Technology Replacement Fund, and the newly created Facilities Replacement Fund. Additionally, a new street maintenance fund is being added with Measure S deposit of $1.4 million to begin accumulating resources for the future replacement of the city's road network. A total of $10.8 million, or 41% of Measure S, is recommended to fund 35 different capital projects this coming fiscal year, with the larger ones noted here. Most notable is the $4.7 million for the complete reconstruction of the Margarita Rec Center, and the addition of $500,000 to complete the design of the new teen village. A total of $6.8 million is allocated to fund TCSD, the library, and residential streetlights, as well as an increase to the level of service provided by Parks Maintenance. As you've heard throughout this presentation so far, and illustrated on the past few slides, you can see the widespread use of Measure S dollars at work throughout our city. With the recent establishment of the Irrevocable Pension Trust, as approved by Council this past Tuesday, a new budget policy outlining the eligible investments for the trust has been added. A total of $8 million was deposited into this fund in fiscal year 17-18, with future deposits estimated between $3 to $4 million per year. Additionally, an administrative change is recommended to the staffing budget policy to allow the use of the CAL separation reserve for vacancies created by long-term situations not necessarily associated with employment separation. And now I'll turn it back over to Aaron to discuss staffing levels.
Thank you, Jennifer. Staffing levels citywide have remained relatively flat since 2012. Recently, in an unprecedented move, the City Council approved the conversion of 11 project positions with TCSD to full-time benefited positions. And due to increased demands on our Community Development Department, I am recommending the addition of 3 positions this coming fiscal year, as well as a half-time position to support economic development. This would bring the total authorized positions to 171.7. This includes the 5 City Council members and 2 unfunded positions that are dedicated to the future opening of the Margarita Recreation Center. In addition, as a result of the annual classification study process, as outlined in the city's labor agreements and thoroughly analyzed and recommended by a professional third party, I am also recommending the reclassification of 16 existing positions. 8 of these positions are represented, 7 are management-level positions, and the city clerk position will be reclassified into the Director of Legislative Affairs / City Clerk. And the corresponding salary range will be reflected in the salary schedule provided at the June 12th budget adoption hearing. Even with the recommended positions and previous city council consideration, city staffing still remains 39 positions below the peak in 2007-2008 of 210 positions. This fact is certainly not lost on me and is a real testament to the dedicated individuals that make up our existing workforce. It also speaks to how special a place Temecula is, that it has allowed us to hire and retain top talent in the region over the years with a heart and commitment to public service here in Temecula. I'm very proud of what we've been able to accomplish and the organizational excellence we continue to strive towards on a daily basis. At this time, I'd like to introduce Kevin Hawkins, our Community Services Director, who will walk you through the highlights of the Community Service District budget.
Thanks, Aaron. The mission of TCSD is to improve the quality of life for our residents through a complement of programs, services, events, and activities, as we call it, creating community through people, parks, and programs. The fiscal year 18-19 TCSD annual operating budget, the projected revenue is estimated at $21.7 million. Major funding sources are broken down by TCSD rates and charges, $10.4 million, $1.85 million, which represents the TCSD portion of Measure C funding. The other half goes to park maintenance, which is included in the general fund. $6.75 million is the contribution from Measure S, and $2.6 million is made up of a combination of recreation fees and contract class user fees and other revenue sources. Again, which brings us to total projected revenues at $21.7 million. Next slide provides our proposed expenditures at $22.6 million. With expenditures exceeding revenue by $900,000, CSD will utilize available fund balance to cover the difference. On the expenditure side, our main categories are as follows. $11.1 million for parks and recreation, $8 million for recycling and refuse hauling, $1.5 million for slope maintenance, $789,000 residential street lighting, can you hear me? $977,000 for the Ronald H. Roberts Temecula Public Library, $247,000 for operation and maintenance costs associated with the Harveston Lake Park, and $9,663 for dirt road maintenance services at Leafer Road. Community Services Program highlights for fiscal year 18-19 include the continuation of Southern California's premier car show, the annual Temecula Ride Run, which, depending on the weather, brings in over 55,000 people to Old Town each year to enjoy this signature event. From Old Town to the Ronald Reagan Sports Park, always great fun and a safe environment for the entire family, is the 4th of July Parade and Fireworks Show, which will again showcase Temecula's unrivaled patriotic spirit. One of my favorite events will be the 11th Annual Special Games, truly an inspirational celebration of our special needs athletes. Christmas time will offer Santa's Electric Light Parade, Santa's House at Penny Pickle's Workshop, and ice skating here in Old Town. Also in Old Town, watch art come to life in the form of chalk murals, handcrafted jewelry, photography, and more at the annual Art and Street Painting Festival. Additionally, the city will proudly pay tribute to our local veterans at the annual Patriotic Salute to Veterans Day event, featuring the Inland Valley Symphony on the steps of the Civic Center. And speaking of the symphony, a quick reminder as part of our Memorial Day weekend observance is this Saturday's Tribute to Heroes at 3 p.m. right out front on the Civic Center steps. And speaking of heroes, I would be remiss if I didn't briefly mention the Fallen Heroes Memorial, which should be completed in time for a late summer ribbon cutting. Conceived by the Military Ad Hoc Subcommittee and paid for through the sacrifice of heroes such as Temecula resident and Marine Staff Sergeant Louis Carden, the city collaborated with community partners, including the VFW, the Temecula Valley Women's Club, Riverside County Supervisor Chuck Washington, Commissioner Bob Hagel, and others for a powerful memorial that will truly honor our veterans and heroes the right way, the Temecula way. The city also continues to collaborate with our wonderful nonprofit friends groups for both the Children's Museum and the Temecula Valley History Museum, as well as the Old Town Temecula Association and Visit Temecula Valley to bring residents and visitors these wide-ranging seasonal attractions which are synonymous with the high quality of life here in Temecula. This year, TCSD staff will continue our extremely popular activities at the California Parks and Recreation Society award-winning Eagle Soar Playground and Splash Pad. Human Services will be expanding on the successful Global Citizens Horticulture program model to develop a new internship program for special needs individuals. Looking for safe and timely curb-to-curb transportation from the Mary Phillips Senior Center to various locations throughout the community? Well, as an outcome of the recently completed Senior Services Master Plan process, City offers alternative transportation every Wednesday on the Silver Shuttle to its senior residents. The Intergenerational Tech Program was founded on a simple premise that young people know more about computers and smartphones than adults and seniors. We were right, which resulted in a very successful intergenerational program over at the Mary Phillips Senior Centers. Our Culture Arts team continues to showcase Temecula's Helen Putnam award-winning offerings through the Old Town Temecula Community Theater, Jazz at the Merc, and Art Off the Walls on the first Friday of the month. Temecula's History Museum programming builds upon last year's TripAdvisor Certificate of Excellence. This year will feature the completion of a History of Temecula children's book, continuation of our Culture Quest summer camp program, and approximately 30 school tours, 50 regular tours, and 7 exhibits for the year. Another highlight was the launch of Around and About Temecula. Bringing the pages of our recreation and theater brochures to life, Around and About Temecula is our monthly community outreach web series where we showcase all that community services has to offer. As always, TCSD will continue to offer the highest quality of sports, recreation, and aquatics programs this next fiscal year for a very deserving community. As community ambassadors, the city's parks and open spaces will continue to be safeguarded through our Park Ranger program. Also a critical part of TCSD operations, the Ronald H. Roberts Temecula Public Library provides excellent library services for our community with a monthly circulation of approximately 50,000 items, the highest in the county. In concert with other city staff, public safety, the nonprofit community, faith-based organizations, and regional partners, and as part of our wide-ranging quality of life efforts, TCSD will continue to provide homeless outreach program administration and coordination to address the issues of street-level homelessness in Temecula. Under teen outreach, despite the many offerings we have here in Temecula, like in most cities, we can do more for our teens. To further refine our efforts by identifying what teens want here in our community, we have developed a quick survey to help us design a future facility. Through this and other outreach efforts, we hope to create new, safe, and innovative opportunities for Temecula teens. Now, from community services to community development, I'd like to again turn it over to Community Development Director Luke Watson.
Thanks, Kevin. Finally, the proposed successor agency to the Temecula Redevelopment Agency, otherwise known as SARTA, fiscal year 18-19 operational budget includes debt obligations of the former Temecula Redevelopment Agency. The city's redevelopment agency was dissolved by the state in 2012, as I mentioned earlier, and since then, the city has worked to wind down the remaining SARTA obligations. It is critical to note that the funding source for the remaining repayment of the SARTA obligations is the Riverside County Redevelopment Property Tax Trust Fund. This fund is made up of property tax receipts collected by the County of Riverside. The city's only responsibility is to administer the SARTA obligations until the term of those obligations expires. The county trust fund proceeds are simply passed through to the city. No general fund dollars are obligated or used to satisfy the SARTA obligations. The State Department of Finance approved the following outstanding obligations for fiscal year 2018-19. First, debt service payments for the former RDA bonds, which total $5.5 million. This amount was reduced significantly from the prior year due to the refinancing of the outstanding debt obligations of the former redevelopment agency. And second, $1.1 million is other Department of Finance approved obligations, including the Abbott Development and Disposition Agreement and the previously discussed affordable housing obligations. I'll now turn it over to Mr. Adams to discuss next steps.
Thanks, Luke. The formal adoption of the fiscal year 18-19 operating budget and CIP, again, will be presented to the City Council on June 12th. And per city policy, staff also creates a 5-year financial forecast of the general fund, Measure S fund, and TCSD each year. These long-range forecasts serve as strategic planning tools to help evaluate the city's ability to meet its long-term obligations. Granted, priorities can and they will change, yet the 5-year modeling has become an invaluable tool for us to utilize and to ensure a solid fiscal and stable future is paramount. We are not just concerned about the year in front of us, but rather those that follow. The primary benefit of long-range planning is to alert decision makers of trends in time, to implement changes if necessary. As such, it is important for me to acknowledge that one such revenue stream that has a very questionable future is that of SB 1, the gas tax that was signed by the governor in 2017. Our city is programming and expending this revenue in accordance with the state guidelines, yet it appears likely a repeal effort will be put to the voters of California this November. So what does it mean for our community? If it is repealed, it will mean that we will lose $1.8 million annually to conduct pavement management and street maintenance citywide. Unfortunately, it also means we stand to lose $37 million that is programmed for the second phase of the French Valley Parkway interchange, a very important regional freeway improvement. In addition, as a city, we intend to watch closely the election results next month surrounding Proposition 69, which is the measure that closes the gap on SB 1 gas tax expenditures. That will also be an indicator going into November's repeal decision.
The 5-year forecast includes realistic revenue growth assumptions based on recent trends and known changes on the horizon. Expenditure projections reflect the information received from the county related to both the police and fire service contracts, fixed staffing levels for all non-safety departments, the maintenance of police staffing ratios to keep pace with population growth, and the continuation of the 4-person per engine fire staffing model. With the infusion of Measure S funding, the 5-year outlook for the general fund remains fiscally strong, with revenues exceeding expenditures, reserves fully funded, and the general fund structurally balanced all 5 years. As summarized on the screen, Measure S funds have also been modeled over the coming 5 years in accordance with Council's appropriation guidelines. This table illustrates the rapid shift of funding towards public safety as the cost of the police and fire departments continue to rise over the coming 5 years. Measure S funding dedicated to public safety grows from 22% this year to 47% by year 5. The ongoing reinvestment into the city's roads, vehicles, facilities, parks, and technology necessary to properly maintain and replace our city's assets are a priority and will be funded in the $3 to $4 million range per fiscal year. General services includes funds to augment Measure C and program revenues to maintain existing service levels within TCSD, the library, and residential streetlights. Measure S funds available for capital projects will lessen over time as the operational costs of public safety and TCSD increase.
In closing, I would again just like to reiterate the uniqueness and privilege of the opportunity we have been given to balance out 5 years, meet our reserve requirements, fund the public safety to our desired levels, invest heavily into needed capital projects, invest into proper maintenance of existing assets, and maintain the high quality of life of programs and services our residents have come to expect. We have a great deal to be proud of and really remain a blessed community on many fronts. It is certainly deserving to express our thanks and gratitude to our citizens who have allowed us to be in this trusted and enviable position to provide this level of delivery and service. To highlight again, the major investments for the coming fiscal year include in excess of $50 million for police, fire, and other public safety services and equipment. A total investment of nearly $9 million to continue to maintain our city's road network. And over $289 million has been identified to fund nearly 60 capital improvement projects over the next 5 years. I'd like to thank all the department heads and their staff for their efforts in preparing excellent budget submittals. I also want to recognize the members of the budget team who have dedicated many hours over the past several months to complete this year's AOB and CIP binders. My special thanks go to Finance Director Jennifer Hennessy, Rudy Graciano, Pascal Brown, Tricia Hawk, and Mike Wooten. And with that, Mr. Mayor, staff is available to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, well, thank you. Do we have any questions from the council? Ms. Edwards.
You know, it's a smaller thing on the scale of CIP and SARTA and things, but where are we with the Jimmy Moore Memorial?
Yeah, we're very close. We actually have the language submitted to Mrs. Moore, and we're kind of waiting on her to approve the final rendition of that for the inscription on the monument itself. And then I think it'll go in relatively short order. The improvements out front here can move pretty fast. We're hopeful, if we hear back from PEG, I would say we'll be having a dedication ceremony this summer.
Okay,
is that
great.
fair?
Yeah, and one more thing, in the Temecula history book, I'm hoping that we'll, you know, Jimmy and Peg and that committee will be included if we start from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was mentioned when this came to council that this memorial, this acknowledgement of one of the city's founders should become part of the field trips that we coordinate with the school district down at the museum. And so when they make a stop here, they will visit this, and he will be forever memorialized as part his role, you know, in the founding of
That's going to be in the founder's trapezoid, I believe, is where we ended up.
Yeah, do you want to revisit the shape?
Yeah, I
conversation?
think we should.
All right, any other questions? All right, let's go ahead and take public comment then. Could, have our first speaker, please.
Our first and only speaker is John Kelleher.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Mr. Kelleher.
As we evaluate our budget in simple terms, what we're figuring out is what community services we're going to deliver to our citizens for the investment they make in tax dollars. Services like public safety, basic infrastructure, and community health and well-being. Most of the items being considered require investment but do not generate revenue. In short, we pay the price and we get the benefit. Some items, however, not only deliver benefits, but they also help generate revenues from outside our community. In short, someone else pays the price and we get the benefit. These items give us more for our money, a superior return on our investment, and I'd just like to ask that our budget process give these amplifiers the preferential status that a superior investment should have. Investments that support our robust tourism economy are an example of one of these amplifiers. The visitor who comes to our community for recreation is really, in terms of our budget process, an individual who's willing to pay for a larger portion of our community benefits while consuming a disproportionately smaller portion of them. Non-residents account for approximately 1/2 of Temecula's sales tax revenues, and overnight guests in our hotels contribute via the transient occupancy tax, the TOT, about $22 million from these two line items alone. That's an enviable situation for Temecula. Most cities do not have the luxury of a huge tax influx from non-residents. Visitors who spend money in our community include regional residents who come to shop at our retail outlets, our malls, our auto dealerships, and also tourists who spend money in our hotels, restaurants, and entertainment venues. As our neighboring cities like Menifee mature and develop more shopping options, our share of the regional spend will diminish. That makes tourism dollars even more important as a contributor to our future financial viability. The kinds of investments that support tourism economy also add benefits for our residents. Investments that a municipality can make to support tourism include improving traffic circulation, beautifying our city, and providing ample security in busier public areas. Simply put, to support tourism, a city needs to make itself a desirable place to visit, which goes hand in hand with making a city a desirable place to live in. Within the budget is funding for the I-15 beautification project, the Old Town parking structure study, and many signature events here in Old Town and in other places. Those projects are premier examples of investments that promote our tourism economy while helping our citizens as well. Other examples which I'd like the city to give preferential attention to include promoting the authenticity of Old Town, supporting improved wayfinding signage, and assigning higher levels of public safety resources to areas where tourists congregate. Thank you all for your time and for helping establish Temecula as a fiscally sound city with a truly superb standard of living.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's see, moving on. Do we have any discussion? Comachero.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, thank you to staff. It's always a pleasure to see that we're, again, looking at balanced budgets, in this case out for 5 years, and really seeing the net effects of Measure S every time we look at dollars and finances. So it's really a great job by everybody. I do have one thing, though, that it kind of struck me, and I apologize to staff. This is something that normally I would have talked to you about before, but it didn't occur to me until looking at particularly the capital improvement budget and putting a few things together. Number one, looking at what we have in the current capital improvement program and what we don't have. And also looking at the self-imposed mandates that we've put on ourselves through the Quality of Life Master Plan to ensure that we maintain and grow the assets that we've already made a substantial commitment in. And then three, what was really startling was the chart that showed the decrease in available funding for capital improvements as the years go out, particularly because of the increases in public safety. So all the more important to take care of those things that are most important to us closer to the front end, I think, than the back end of the 5 years. So, I'm thinking of the Children's Museum specifically. The facility is close to 15 years old now, deteriorating rapidly because it gets tremendous use, mostly by 3-year-olds, but 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds. And it really is in need of refurbishing. The exhibits are deteriorating rapidly. Many of them no longer work. And we've spent several years putting Band-Aids on them. I don't think Mario's here, does a tremendous job of trying to keep things together. But it's just beyond the scope of that kind of maintenance. So what I'd like to see is a total of $1 million devoted, $500,000 in this current or the coming up budget year in the CIP and $500,000 in the following year, so we can really bring that facility back up to its glory and make sure that attendance, which is high, remains that way and the facility remains relevant. That's all I've got.
Can I ask, excellent point, Mr. Comachero. Can I ask Mr. Hawkins a question, though? In planning, I understand you're embarking on sort of a master planning effort for a lot of the facilities, including the Children's Museum and the History Museum and so forth, which my assumption would be includes some accounting for cost of maintenance and upgrades, facilities and so forth. Can you describe that a little bit for us?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. In terms of any overall park or facility master plan, that's pushed out. That's, I believe, a FY 2019-20 project. So that's not a process that's going to begin immediately. But what it will do is do a needs assessment or facility or inventory assessment to determine what our current facility and program needs are and our future needs. That will take a look at recreation, cultural arts, and the like. So yes, our museums would also be included.
Can you give me an estimate of what that effort was projected to cost?
I believe that. Looked it up, but
It's programmed at 250,000 in fiscal year 2021.
and that's a pretty typical range for a very robust park master or community services master plan. 250. It could actually exceed that depending on the scope of what we take a look at doing.
Well, can I propose something here, Mr. Comachero?
You can, I might fight you, but let's go.
All right, well.
Wouldn't be the first time.
I know, right? Because, I'd like to see that sort of master planning effort across, facilities proceed, because I'm sort of thinking the same thing for the History Museum and other, facilities could use some, some TLC at this point, and we certainly don't want to wait. Pushing it out to 2021, a little concerning for me, just because I feel like we should jump on that sooner rather than later. And I'm wondering if maybe we could do a little bit of a hybrid approach to what you were talking about. If we want to contemplate, increasing the budget in those categories over the next year to two, see if we can't get that first, influx of funding to start the master planning process and review in fiscal year 18-19. And then, I recognize that there's a need at the museum as well, and take, an additional 250,000 in 18-19, put it toward emergency, or, not emergency, but you know what I mean, the more urgent needs at the museum. And then by the end of next fiscal year, we'll have a pretty good accounting of all the other needs across facilities, including the Children's Museum, and be able to prioritize those then, with an eye toward, making sort of more rapid contributions given our influx of funding for Measure S.
And I appreciate that. I think there's certainly some merit to a hybrid approach like that, but the need really is acute now. And but again, I do think it makes sense in some ways to wait for the full needs assessment for the entire city. So I would counter that and propose that we include only the first 500,000 in the current CIP, and then wait until the results, say 2 years out or whatever it happens to be, as to what additional needs may be. So I'll go along with that. Instead of 500,000 this year and 500,000 the following year, if we devote the first 500,000 now to take care of the immediate needs, which are really acute, and put the other 500,000 in abeyance until we see the results of the overall study.
Mm-hmm. Is that a motion?
Well, I don't think do we want to make motions at this point?
Yeah, just so I understand, and just to be clear, the community service master plan in the CIP is listed in 2021, 250K, does not have a revenue assigned to it. It's listed as unspecified. So if we're talking about moving that effort up to 18-19 is what I'm kind of hearing, start the master planning of facilities, we will need to identify, and we can, a way to pay for that. But concurrently with that, some level of investment immediately in whether it's the Children's Museum or the History Museum or other facilities in 18-19 is what, concurrently with the master plan effort.
Yeah, I think that's important. We have a real gem there, and I don't think anybody would dispute that. Unfortunately, we've never really had good numbers on what the overall attendance has been because it's been scattered. But it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 visits a year. That's a facility, any facility with that kind of patronage needs substantial maintenance. And in that facility, it's gone beyond the maintenance point to where things need to either be refurbished or replaced. And I'm really concerned if we don't do that we've already started to go downhill there, and it hasn't shown up yet in attendance, but it will, it has to. Many of the exhibits no longer function, no longer work. And while it's nice for kids to come and look at them, that's not the purpose of the facility. So no, I'm going to stick to my guns on this one if I can get support for it. I think it's really a dire need right now.
Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily opposed to that idea, except for I would really like to see more of a line item repair list, or, you know, what kind of maintenance needs to be done. Just to give a blanket 500,000, I'm not comfortable with that. But if you gave me reasons why you needed 500,000 to maintain this facility, I'd be more apt to be able to vote for it.
If I may, it's not really a question of maintenance, it's a question of capital investment. But I think your point is well taken.
Yeah.
And in any expenditure of this type, nobody's going to hand over a check to
Right,
anybody.
right.
So
Well,
you know, it's going to have to be,
It was
fully
more
vetted and.
for
sure.
Aaron and maybe Pat, you know, to be able to give that to me.
Sure. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I have a,
I can point out that we do have $100,000 programmed for next year for Children's Museum enhancements, so that's what's in the current budget proposal.
Not enough.
Ms. Edwards?
I concur, and of course, we wouldn't do anything without seeing you know, we have to do an assessment and we have to see a list, but, you know, if you haven't been to the museum lately, it does look very tired. But when you have that many kids going through every day, and the other thing is too, that really, I think we've only added maybe one brand new exhibit that I know of since the beginning, so, that's another thing too.
City didn't buy either, which is great. I mean, that's terrific.
Right, and we really do need to upgrade. Children do come to this multiple times as a destination, so they come over and over again, and I think the parents have just as much fun as the kids, so, but I do think we need to change our exhibits, you know, to different types of hands-on activities. And thank goodness for the programs. The programs are just exciting, and that's really what brings a lot of the kids in, is the Saturday programs and the special activities they do during the evenings. But definitely we need to upgrade those exhibits. They're looking pretty tired, and a lot of them don't work. So, I mean, I could support that with, you know, the assessed list of, or proposed list of what the upgrades will be or what the repairs will be.
Can I just follow up, because I should ask Mr. Adams and Ms. Hennessy, if we should vote to support that, can you find the money?
Yeah, well, depending on what the number is, if we can settle today on what you'd like to see dedicated towards facilities in general, or are we narrowing it to just the two museums or one museum? That would be helpful. And depending on what that number is, we will find the money, albeit with a little bit of exercise between now and June 12th. It could come at the expense of some other things, and I would be prepared to present, we'll do this, but we're going to have to cut this over here. That's typically how it works. If that's the will of the council, we'll
And
make
that
it
we'd
work.
see that in the June
12th.
meeting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so, Mr. Nagar.
Yeah, just real quick. In general, when we start talking about things like museum or any museum, or any of the city's facilities, they got to be the best they can. I mean, really, that's the tact we need to take. If we have exhibits there that are no longer functioning, I get it. You know, we have been fiscally responsible, and prior to Measure S, our priority was public safety, particularly if Measure S didn't pass, and it's still our priority. But now, as we move away from all that, everything's got to be top of the line. I'm really impressed with, Kevin, what your department has done, along with the subcommittee in revitalizing our parks equipment, and that fits the theme that I'm talking about. Everything that we're putting in is new, it's fresh, it's innovative, makes kids want to play and use the parks. When at a time they would just sit there and nobody would go because they were boring.
Yeah.
The Children's Museum falls under that category as well. And my last comment is, what's fascinating, it's become a staple now of, you know, of the schools are visiting it. It is part of their curriculum, and so it's got to be the best that it
Is a motion in order for that, or you want to take it at the end?
Well, just to revisit though, I'd still really like to see us accelerate the overall planning process. Because if we're going to commit funding, you know, this isn't the only facility, like Mr. Nagard pointed out. I mean, we've got a lot of wonderful things here that need attention. And I'm not discounting the Children's Museum, and I know that's a priority, but, you know, given the horizon of where we're looking at for Measure S funds and the amount of funds that we can place in a capital, if we go, you know, 2021 for, you know, master planning and then, you know, implementation into the CIP by, you know, 21, 22 or 22, 23, then we've missed a potential window of opportunity to get those, you know, funds into a CIP for all these other facilities. You know, so if we're going to make a motion on this, I'd like to see us accelerate that part of the planning process. And then, you know, as we start to contemplate, you know, an additional 500,000 toward the Children's Museum, we'll have a much better idea of where that needs to go and what the priorities are. So I would support that as long as we take that other piece into consideration.
Yeah, and I think we kind of already passed that, I think. So I'll make that motion that we move the 250,000 for the study up to the coming up year and include 500,000 in the CIP for the Children's Museum.
I'll second.
Okay. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
So the $500,000, would that be after we get a assessment of what needs to be done?
No.
Oh,
No,
that would just be.
It's, I mean, just go in there, and I think you have.
Yeah.
500,000 is a drop in the bucket. So I think no matter what comes out in the survey study, we're going to find it needs more than that. So we need to get that rolling right. But again, no money's ever going to be spent in our budget without a line on it that says this is what this cost and this is what we'll cut a check for after or do, you know, that upgrade. So.
Since we're
Mr. Mayor, can I
having a conversation in the middle of a vote,
Yeah,
usually isn't how we do it, but since we're down that path, let's put a pause on that. Mr. Adams?
Just to add a couple quick things I was thinking as you were talking. One is, you saw on the screen early on that we're definitely committed to setting up these asset management, which is right in line with what Councilmember Comachero is saying. Facilities is one of those dedicated reserve accounts that we'll be paying ourselves in years to come, hopefully. And so we can stay on top, or actually get ahead and then stay on top of these facility maintenance requirements that we're discussing now. So there is dollars budgeted. We'll go back and we'll look at what we're planning to put into the reserve account for facilities citywide. I'm hearing that, well, I'll wait for the motion. The second thing is, I've talked with all of you, and we talked a little bit about it today. The financing of the streetlights program is a fluid situation. It's quite possible that we'll be coming back to the city council with an alternative financing option that doesn't include financing the streetlights, rather paying cash for that and financing the improvements to the Margarita Recreation Center. Should we do that, it frees up dollars that were otherwise committed in the capital improvement program to do some of this. And I anticipate we'll be in that position in the next 30 to 60 days once we hear from the CPUC to sort of make that collective decision and then come back to the council. So there's a lot there, but I know you guys understand it, but that might be another fiscal solution.
Mr. Mayor, call for the completion of the vote.
All right, just one other quick point before we do, and that's Mr. Hawkins, between now and June 12th, could yourself and staff prepare a bit of a punch card for us on what the immediate needs are and sort of a back of the envelope calculation of what those costs would be, so we have a little bit better handle on that.
Costs related to the master plan or costs related to the Children's Museum
specifically?
That's something that we typically coordinate.
I think what I was hearing is we have the facility, the building itself, and we did do a roof replacement last year, so we have done some work on the building itself. I think what I was hearing is you're more interested in like the inside, the exhibits.
No question. No.
Yeah.
Again, I can't stress enough, we're not talking about maintenance dollars here. We're talking about capital investment.
Right, so we can certainly work with the museum folks and see if we can come up with an inventory of the exhibits and, you know, what it may take to upgrade some of those, yeah.
Yeah, and just give us a sense of where that first $500,000 would go in the next fiscal year. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at least maybe helps answer some of Mr. Stewart's concerns. Mr. Butler?
Just real quick,
This reminds me of what we've been doing with our pavement maintenance efforts. We had an old outdated pavement maintenance system that rated all the streets, and intuitively, us in the engineering field can tell you which streets need maintenance. Yet now we've completed our study and we'll be able to have a correlation between this new study and where we should be programming these dollars. We'll do the same thing on a facility maintenance effort where intuitively we know which facilities, which exhibits need to be replaced. As we work through the master plan, as we work through our asset management plan, we'll have a better identifier of, oh, by the way, not only does the Children's Museum need a little TLC, the History Museum, we've already identified the CRC pool as an asset that needs investment. So we'll formalize that through the process. But knowing that we have these ongoing rehabilitation or maintenance efforts, it's wise for us to kind of get a jump on those, keep those under in good working order, and then finalize the process as we go through in parallel.
Okay,
Then yes, I vote for it.
all right. Sounds good. Right. Well, I think
We didn't
everybody
vote
else.
for it.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
4 and a maybe, another maybe.
So it was okay.
Maybe you ought to take it.
Okay, let's do it one more time.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a motion, Mr. Comachero, second by Ms. Edwards. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Yeah.
For fun. All right. Hey, killing me
Thank
here.
you.
All right. Okay, well, let's see. Where else are we today? Adjournment? Do we need a motion on the balance of this, though, on the recommendation? That'll come on the 12th. Okay, well then,
Where I know we wrapped this up pretty good. You know, I would have had a lot more questions, but doggone it, you guys just really covered it from soup to nuts.
Yeah, it's good.
You
Very good.
really did. So just my compliments to your entire team, Mr. Adam.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that.
all right. Well, we are adjourned then. Thanks so much.
All right.